Welcome. My name is Stuart Points, and I am a professor. I'm the director of the School of Communication. It is a tremendous honor to welcome you to this Alumni Celebration, part of our 50th anniversary celebration of the School of Communication. And let me just start by saying how grateful I am to all of you for coming out and reminding us of the rich, beautiful history of our school and of the people who have been part of making our school such a special place. When you plan these events and you arrive at 4 o'clock and you wonder what the room will feel like and how it will fill out, and people began arriving almost immediately as 5 o'clock turned. It was such a encouraging and beautiful sign in the early days of November, when the days are getting darker and we're all very, very busy, and we know that the world that surrounds us is filled with sadness and hardness and a kind of cruelty that hurts many that we love. And in the midst of that, to have you come and join us and spend time with us is a tremendous honor. So I want to thank you, just as a way of starting off, for being with us and giving us a sense of real joy at celebrating our history. So I begin with a hand to you. We have a lovely night ahead. I want to thank, first of all, very quickly, because their contributions as folks were entering the room was extraordinarily important. Our cellist Heather Hay and our pianist Bill Piggott, who are at the back in the middle of the room. We're so very grateful for your contribution. I am also grateful to those who have helped us set up the event. And I want to turn in just a moment to Morgan Guerin, Musqueam elder, who has been with us and helped us to open a number of our 50th anniversary events in a way that has been filled with a sense of warmth and care and a call to gather together. I acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional ancestral lands of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And it's my real honor to welcome to the stage Morgan Guerin, who's going to help us to open our time together this evening. Morgan, welcome.
CMNS, dear friends and relatives, and the Setzeleno. My name is Morgan Guerin. I'm a member of the Musqueam First Nation. My ancestral name is Setzeleno, and I'm an elder in training. I still pay full price at Denny's. Not there yet. But my elder said, if you ever get called that, that's a great honor. So take it, smile, and just nod. So thanks. I'm very honored to be here today to provide a few words of welcome. And for those who don't understand, there's a little bit of difference between an acknowledgement and a welcome. An acknowledgement is others understanding the land that they stand on and the people who stewarded it before. And the welcome, of course, is from the nation themselves. So I have been told by my nation to be here to bring these words. So it's not just me coming to say them, but actually carrying a message on behalf of my nation. So I'm very honored to do that. In fact, it was my great-great-great-great-great-grandpa was Kayapalano. Many of you know the anglicized version, Capilano, who is a leader and warrior for our people, because the Musqueam people were defenders of the territory. It was our role in stewardship is to make sure that those who came to these lands came in peace and with good intention. So I'm very honored to carry those words of that grandpa of mine, who in 1791 or 1792 saw the first ships, European sails, to see these shores, which is kind of late in the game for colonialism across Canada. But we heard about them. And this is important because within Musqueam, actually, if we follow the trail, and I said this to another group who came a few weeks ago, at the other end of Granville Street is a village called Tsesnam. Tsesnam was this amazing place of commerce and trade. In fact, it was one of the largest trading ports in the world at its time, 5,000 years ago. Pieces of it are much older than the pyramids themselves. And in fact, if you take Coast Salish territory, which goes halfway up BC and the other halfway down to almost Oregon, you drop a pin in the center, it's under your feet there. And for the reason of the people would come to get our salmon, which were so rich and abundant that our people lived to be centennial beings thousands of years ago, when the rest of the world was kind of fighting to hit their 40s. So I'm very proud of those ancestors. But something else came through those trade networks: news of the world, communication. We're an oral history people. And so understanding the importance of integrity and the rigor in which you send those messages from one person to the next, so that that message is accurate instead of playing the telephone game. And I'm pretty sure even with this amazing group, we'd get it wrong by the time it came over here. But if I said that each one of you was a generation, and you'd probably be only making up probably about to the maybe 800 years ago in this room, that information is still very accurate, to the point that there are no real aha moments in the archaeology world around here. They just kind of go, oh, and then they look at Musqueam and say, told you, we keep telling you. Ta-da, eureka. So when I've been coming to say some of these words, especially to these beautiful panels we had, people bringing their perspectives, views, and how they do that, considering the look at the times that we're living in, those teachings of my ancestors are still just as important today as they've ever been, for that rigor and for that integrity to make sure that the information is getting through. So it is really my deep honor to see all of you here today. In fact, I said some words: CMNS. CM means a respected person, CIA means friends. CM is also the way that we refer to somebody almost like their masters, their PhD. We see that they are respected for the way that they carry. And for an alumni group, that is you. You would be the CMs. You are the ones who carry the message with the rigor and the integrity. And more importantly, you understand the importance of succession, to send it to the next generation, to say, from these failing hands, you carry the message. So that said, it's easy on this beautiful place, which means actually the place of the big maples. That's what we used to make the paddles out of. I don't see them now, but there were maples here. To say in the same words of my ancestor, my great-great-grandpa, on behalf of the Musqueam Nation, I welcome you to our traditional and unceded territory. We say, "Emitsep Kotwilam." It's our way of saying you are welcome, but in the beautiful translation is, all of you come to me. So it's somebody I trust. All of you come to me. So that said, Emitsep Kotwilam. I'd also like to deeply honor, acknowledge my relatives from Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh. In fact, I am part Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh. It was our three nations who looked after and stewarded Mother Earth here. And together we were once divided by lines and boundaries that someone else drew, but we have maintained that we are always one family, strengthened by bloodlines. So that said, Mitsep Kotwilam, welcome, Haitsepka, thank you for being here today.
Morgan, thank you so much. We come together with your welcome. May we all come together in our work as Indigenous and non-Indigenous people to work together to create a decolonized Indigenous nation together. And may that be our future. Thank you. Morgan has helped us to begin a number of evenings this fall, and this one is a special evening. We have a number of really fantastic guests to share with you. We're very grateful that President Joy Johnson has been able to interrupt her very busy schedule this week. Some of you may have seen her on the social media in Victoria and traveling, and we're very grateful that at the end of that busy week, she's able to come and spend time with us. We're grateful that Simi Sarah, Shadrach Kabango, Shad, as some of you will know, my colleagues and friends, Martin Laba, Victoria Thomas, have come to join us, and all of you. And it'll be my pleasure in a few moments to introduce them to you. This fall, we have, as you will know, been hosting a series of events, some of you will know at any rate, that aim to revisit and explore who we are as a school. And who we are as a school is not only registered in our history, in the events that we've shared, in the ideas, the work that we have produced together, but in the people that we are. And as Martin said, as he laid out for us as an opening, the legacies that you carry with you, that you bring into the world, are the history and the future of our school. And we're very grateful for you, for the work you do to tell the story of your experience in the School of Communication, what it meant to you, what it's meant to have that as part of your history, something that in the short conversations I've had with some people this evening, I know how much this history can register. I too am an alumnus of the School of Communication. I did my master's in the school back in the 90s. And some of the people you're going to hear about tonight, some of the folks who are part of the history of our school, were part of my experience in the school. And it's a lovely, beautiful experience to be able to return to these moments, to these names, to these times that sometimes slip from our memory. But when they come back, they bring joy, they bring happiness, they bring smiles to our faces. As we've celebrated the history of our school, we've concentrated on the way in which, at the level of teaching and research, our school has long been dedicated to promoting and fostering critical thinking, critical action in the world, ways of responding to the needs of others, to the injustices and equities that we see before us, and finding impact in ways to change those situations, those contexts, those experiences of ourselves and others. This idea of communication as critique has informed our school for 50 years. It continues to inform our teaching and our research. It continues to give us a sense of purpose and a sense of focus to what we do. And it's been lovely it's been really important and lovely and rich and powerful to revisit that history. As we've curated this experience of 50th anniversary, the work of our past, our present, and our future of our world-class faculty, our students, our invited scholars from all parts of the world have been part of our celebration. We continue, and we'll talk a little bit about that celebration as we move along today. I don't know if you need to see me as well. Instead, I'm gonna go here instead. This feels better. Not only are we celebrating through a series of events, but we've also created some artifacts that have allowed us to capture and document our history. So first, I want to share with you, as you will see around the tables, we have created a digital timeline history of the school, which is now live on our website. It launched this week. And what you see on the tables behind you are a series of cards that capture each of the screens that come from the different eras of the school. I want to encourage you to check out the timeline. I think it's a really fantastic and rich archive. In a school that has struggled to create an accessible archive, one of the achievements of our celebration has really been building out this rich history of who we are and who and what has contributed to our past. So I want to draw your attention to that. It's a fantastic celebration. I think it Shauna K. Brown, who's with us. And Shauna K. has been absolutely crucial in building out our digital timeline. Her willingness to dive into paper archives, multiple platforms of digital archives, assemble that work together, call out to alumni, faculty members, encourage them to bring in the materials so that we can have the rich archive that we have, has been nothing short of incredible. Many thanks to Shauna K. In addition to our digital timeline, as part of our celebration, we've also created a tribute video. And this tribute video to the School of Communication is really built on your voices. So some of you will know that over the last 2 months, really, we've been reaching out to alumnus to send us short videos about their time, their experience in the school, and a number of the people who contributed those videos are with us this evening, and we're tremendously grateful to have them. We've cut those videos into a short tribute video, about 4 minutes long, and we are really grateful to those who have contributed and are very proud to share this tribute video with you. So enjoy, please.
Back in the early 70s, instructors like Lynn Vardman and Imbert Orchard taught me the skills that helped me get my first job in television at CKVU and go on to become Vancouver's first full-time female camerawoman. And then move on to Toronto, where I became a journalist at places like CBC's The Journal and helped create the documentary series The Passionate Eye, which I'm very proud of.
Communication gives you that platform to express yourself, and I never really allowed myself to. So allowing myself to finally make that stride was huge because it made me who I am today.
For some reason, the communications department admitted me, a high school dropout, as a mature student in 1979, which led to me getting my dream career directing film, which worked out okay. I really have to thank communications professors Barry Truax, Roland Lorimer, Dallas Smythe, and really the whole school. You changed my life.
I just want to give a huge shout out to the communications department at SFU for helping to spark my current career as an artist educator. So it was in my final year that I was given an opportunity to create a project called Words That Empower Education, and that sparked all of my future endeavors teaching hip-hop education school programs across BC. So it's something I really enjoyed. I'm really, really grateful.
Here I am 15 years after graduating, and I love my career. I've gotten to travel the world and work on amazing projects, and in particular, I really want to thank the cooperative education team. The co-op staff were the people at SFU who showed how much they cared about mine and all of our futures, and they used the resources to connect me with industry mentors. And they were there to celebrate all the little wins along the way. I owe everything to Communication Co-op.
In 1995, I completed my honors degree in communications with a capstone project under the direction of Roland Lorimer, Paul Hare, and Ralph Hancock's. That adolescent reading study made me, in a sense, the beta student for what would become the Masters of Publishing program.
Paco de Lucia, the Spanish guitar player, said once that the left hand is responsible for the creative part of guitar playing, whereas the right hand is supposed to do what the left hand tells it to do. I arrived at SFU with a broken right hand and had to wear a cast during the first semester of my stay, and relying on my left hand was wonderful to cope with all the challenges that I was facing at that time, and I fully enjoyed it.
I studied at the School of Communication back in the mid-1990s. I continued working with the school for my entire career until last year, and I found that the school staff and faculty were the most dedicated and professional and truly cared about their students throughout my entire career at SFU.
I'm an assistant professor at the Alumni School of Public Health in the University of Toronto, and I was an undergraduate student in the School of Communications in the late 80s. It was a time of incredible uncertainty for some of us as we were fighting the AIDS epidemic. And I have to say that I got a lot of very good support in the School of Communications, aside from really interesting learning, which has come full circle now as I'm teaching a new course on health communications.
There was a great faculty over the years, but mainly I wanted to thank Dr. Martin Laba. Martin taught me that all the hours I spent down at the Railway Club listening to music was time well spent. My education served me really well over the course of my career.
Martin, you're a mitzvah to me. You taught me to love to teach. You taught me that for communication as critique to be a thing, human rights matter, democracy matters. You changed my life. And you kind of changed my name.
So, a special toast to SFU's Communications Department.
Happy 50th anniversary, SFU Communication.
Congratulations, School of Communication, and happy 50th.
Happy 50th, everyone.
Thank you for teaching me all those practical skills.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much. And to Richard, our videographer at the back, we're very grateful for your turning our video around. So thank you so much, Richard. Fabulous work. To all those alumni who contributed work and videos to us, we're grateful to you as well. It was tremendous to see the layers of stories that are part of our history. It's my real pleasure now to turn to the beginning of the speakers part of our program. As I mentioned, we're tremendously grateful for President Johnson to make time to come out and open our celebration. Along with Dr. Johnson, it's also my pleasure to recognize our Dean, Carmen Neustetter, who's with us in the room. We're very grateful that he's been able to come and join us. And it's my pleasure now to turn the stage, as it were, over to President Joy Johnson.
Well, Stuart is a very tough act to follow, I have to say, but what a pleasure it is to be here this evening. I want to thank you, Stuart, so much, and the whole team for putting together this remarkable evening and the other events and the archive. And I also want to thank Morgan so very, very much. I enjoyed my conversation with you earlier this evening. I want to thank you for starting us off in a good way. I lift my hands up to you for the work that you've done for us this evening. And I've learned some things. I love to imagine the maple trees outside the window here. I think it's important for us to think about the history of the peoples of these lands. So I too want to acknowledge the lands that were gathered on, the unceded traditional territories of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and of course Musqueam Nation. So here we are, 50 years young. I like to think 50 years is very young, I have to say, at this point in my life, and it is wonderful to be here. Since its beginning in 1973, the School of Communication has grown. I was talking to a few people earlier this evening. I think you started with maybe 6 faculty members or so. Like, it's really grown. It's grown into one of Canada's leading communication programs. And don't tell any of the other departments this, but if I was going to go back to school today, I would go and do a degree in communications, I got to tell you. It's just so interesting, right, to see the variety of things that people in communications are doing. And it's just such a pleasure to meet many of you here this evening. We have the work of our students, our faculty, our staff, and our alumni to thank, really, for moving the school forward in such an incredible way. When the school opened 50 years ago, the meaning of communication meant something very different than it means today. Just hard to imagine what communication meant 50 years ago. As technology has changed, our undergraduate and graduate programs have also evolved to fit a new definition, a definition that includes digital communication. And I want to thank our hardworking faculty and staff for really staying on top of the trends and pivoting, evolving. And I know that you're going to keep evolving along with the world over the next 50 years. As the School of Communication continues to reflect SFU's position as a public, engaged, and active site of learning, and as Stuart also pointed out, social justice. As some of you might know, earlier this year, SFU released a strategy called What's Next? And it's really going to be guiding our work at SFU for the years to come. And one of our key priorities, as outlined in the strategy, is that we're going to engage in global challenges, and that we are indeed going to leverage our resources to help address humanity's most complex problems and questions. And I really do know that the School of Communication has been leading the way. The school is addressing topics like misinformation, fake news, sustainability, climate change, algorithm and platform societies. I don't even know what that means. Indigenous media and communications. Amazing. These topics are essential for equitable communication in our current complex and indeed multimodal landscape. The school's world-renowned faculty, many of you who are here this evening, are really incredible researchers who are really engaging in these global challenges. Many of you have been working hard for many years, and I just want to really pay tribute to all of you for the work that you've done. We have faculty like Victoria Thomas and Martin Laba, who you're going to hear from this evening, but also many others doing just incredible work. And of course, there are our alumni, our amazing alumni. We've got many former students in the room. When each of you got your degree in communication, you also learned to ask important questions, to really think about how our media operate in the world, and how we need to take our responsibility as communicators seriously. As you do know, we have two notable alumni speakers here tonight, and it's been such a pleasure to spend some time with you, Simi Sarah, besides being on the radio together. Nice to see you in person, so fantastic. And a big fan of Chad's, so wonderful to also connect with you this evening. Both these alumni have just done such incredible work. As have all of you. You're moving into fulfilling careers across BC, the country, and the world. You are journalists, you are broadcasters, you are writers, you are publishers, you are social media professionals. At the School of Communication, you received an education that has helped you make a mark on communities, both here in BC and globally. So I want to say thank you. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for celebrating this school. This school does deserve celebration, and I really want to pay tribute to our alumni who really continue to hold the torch for this school and to do the work that you're doing in our communities. The school has always been at the forefront of research and technology, and it will continue to innovate in the future with a new, soon-to-be-announced MA program. Really looking forward to that. So stay tuned on that announcement as well. So unfortunately, I've got one more gig this evening and cannot stay for the full event. It is the life of a president, but I am so glad I was able to make time and be here with you this evening. I know you're going to have an amazing evening of presentations from our faculty and our alumni speakers. And so one more time, I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to everyone in this room. I want to say thank you to Stuart and your team for putting together this amazing event. I want to say thank you to the faculty, to the alumni, to the students who are also here, making the communication program at SFU as special as it is. And I really have to say, I can't wait to see what comes next. Just imagine 50 years from now what we'll be talking about in terms of communication. So have a very good evening. Thank you so much.
That is a great welcome, and thank you so much. It's so lovely to have you offer welcome to our alumni and mark the history of our school. It's a long and rich history. In that history, as many of you have told us, the people that you have met along the way have included a number of incredible faculty members, a number of incredible students who have become your friends, who have become your collaborators, have become your partners in work and onward from there. These are the things that university does for us. It offers us a place to launch and move into new worlds. Sometimes worlds we can't imagine when we enter the university. It's something we're working very hard at to convey to our students today, that university is a place where you come to imagine a different future, often one that wasn't seen when you entered. And it's one of the remarkable gifts of our institution, that it allows a launch to a new reality for us that brings us out into the world in fuller and more creative and more impactful ways. It's one of the reasons many of us, and I include myself in this, hang on to the university as, if not a castle on the hill, certainly a special place that we gather at and collect ourselves together to prepare to make the world a better and more just place. In thinking about the people that allow that vision to carry out, many of our faculty members are key contributors to that. I'm an alumnus, as I mentioned, of the school, and when I started my master's degree way back in 1991, I arrived from Toronto, a place I still hold close to my heart, as much as that's hard to say in a place like Vancouver. And the first person I met when I arrived to visit Vancouver and to visit SFU to determine if this was the place to come as a graduate student was the new director of the School of Communication, a young and energetic and enthusiastic and dynamic, charismatic personality that many of you have come to know, to learn from, and in some cases to love, as I have, quite honestly. Martin Laba is somebody who I have held in the highest regard. Martin is somebody whose contributions to the school as director, as educator, as researcher have been formidable, have been deep, have left a legacy that will guide us into the future. It's amazing how many of our alumni mentioned the role that Martin played in shaping their experience. And so when it came time to select faculty members who would come and speak as part of this event, it was a no-brainer to welcome Martin Laba. And it's my honor to welcome Dr. Martin Laba to the stage to talk to you as alumni.
Okay, what a thrill! Absolutely. I'm very honored to be here and to be able to speak to you, not as a retrospective necessarily, but I hope to get to the core of what communication as a discipline means, both to all of you alumni, and to all of us that have been part of this. So. When I say, oh joy, this is great, this is how I'm beginning, with an unrestrained expression of fulfillment at seeing all of you. I've given many speeches over many years, and on an astonishing range of occasions, events, and issues, probably too many speeches. But this is the first time I've actually formally addressed alumni of the school. And you are, it seems to me, as I look out here, an embodiment of realized potential, if there ever was one. And I'm grateful to have these 10 minutes that I have been allotted to tell you how wickedly awesome you are. There are metrics, many metrics, too numerous to mention, that are applied to determine the success of an academic program. But I'll cut to the chase. The metric that is most forcefully illustrative of a program's preeminence, of a program's relevance, is irrefutably its alumni. And so what I see in you, individually and collectively, writ large, high relief, is the articulation of what it must be, what needs to be the core mission of education and the university. It's a mission of the achievement of citizenship and a ceaseless project of social change. I was the director of the school for, speaking of years too numerous to mention, I think it was 10 years total. And my hope was always, and I think that still the aspiration for us, was that the school served precisely as the site where you learned not only to imagine a better world, but more as a site in which you began to understand how to act upon that world, how to achieve that better world, how to act upon the world in positive, progressive ways with resolve and with confidence. This has been more than theory. I was going to say more than mere theory. That would be a problematic adjective, but I'll say that it has been an urgent and critical practice in the school, a priority. We need to dispense with the unfortunate persistent dichotomy between the university and the real world, because what was and what is at stake in a university education is nothing less than the health and the progress and the well-being of democratic society. That was the potential I always saw in every undergraduate class that I faced for the first time. What is at stake is the achievement of a society that values individual creative and critical thinking, including dissonance and debate and diversity and difference. What is at stake is the achievement of a society that in fact and always should mirror the university, a society that holds knowledge and truth in the highest esteem. The pursuit of knowledge, contemplation, reasoning, experimentation, questioning, all are, in my mind, exalted activities that define your academic studies and are the bases of progressive, humane, collective solutions to gripping social problems of our age. You and I have the enormous privilege to be engaged in a field and a professional practice that ultimately has the capacities to articulate, to guide, and to instigate social change. And what an enormous responsibility we have to see this promise through to action. To have been a student in communication, in my mind, is to always be a student in communication. To understand that we must nurture and protect the foundations of civilized society, because these foundations of civilized society around the globe are under constant challenge and threat. To always imagine new and bold adventures for social change, to stand with purpose and forcefulness against rancor and intolerance and ignorance and fear and violence and injustice and discrimination and hate. What we strive for in communication is education that is democratic, that is experiential, that is critically real world, deeply embedded in the social, political, and cultural currents of our time. Communication, it seems to me, always activates students as it encourages and enables a direct engagement with public issues. This is a discipline that addresses what a student needs to become an informed citizen, capable of participating and in making large and small public decisions that affect the larger world in context of eventual professional careers and private citizenship alike. Simply stated, communication equips students with capacities to transform society, nothing less. To help students understand their own agency over conformity and prescription. To leave the university with equal measures of rigor and imagination, to see themselves always as citizens rather than consumers. I'm reminded of Marshall Gantz's view of the need for educational imagination and the three tools essential for society's constant renewal. Quote, a critical eye of the world, a clear view of its needs and its pain, and hopeful hearts that give a sense of the world's promise and possibilities, unquote. These are daunting and perilous times, unquestionably so. The need for real-world communication is as urgent as it ever was, and perhaps more than ever. Your education was meant to be relevant and resonant in your lives, meaningful, decisive, critical. It was meant to help you articulate and imagine and realize your dreams and aspirations in terms of both citizenship and career. It was meant to make you a change agent as you encounter the velocities and the complexities of boundless, dynamic, and complex media and communication environments and the currents and controversies in which they are necessarily embedded. It was meant to impart to you the drive, the purpose, the vision, the inspiration, and the guidance to act upon and transform the world throughout your lives. So here's my bias. I believe that the single most decisive, crucial, and irrefutably the most exciting, dynamic, kinetic context of the university is the classroom. This is where I understand the deep and substantial stakes of education to reside. This is where such stakes are truly written in high relief. I think the classroom is a site of educational grace. It's where education becomes truly transformative, where we understand that communication is good for social change, where the university models civility and ethicality, compassion and justice. This is where we changed you, I think, where you truly understood that you were a protagonist in your own life and times. And speaking for every instructor you had in communication, this is where you changed us. Your imprint on the school is indelible, so here's to you. May your hopeful hearts remain forever hopeful and continue to inspire and ennoble you throughout your lives, as they are also tangible and consequential in the school, now and in the future. Thank you very much.
I don't know about you, but I'm sure I'm not the only one who felt like they were in a lecture. That they knew, that they heard the tone. They knew how this was turning. Thank you so much, Martin. Over the last 4 or 5 years at least, as the school has moved through a series of changes, One of the really remarkable developments that's happened is, I said 4 or 5 years, I should have really said the last decade. Over the last period of time, at any rate, the school has had a remarkable rejuvenation, a remarkable time of welcoming a group of younger scholars into our midst who have offered new vision, new dynamism, have built on the kind of vision and energy that Martin has shared with us again this evening, who have offered leadership and give us tremendous confidence about the rich and powerful future the school has before it. And in organizing our event today, we wanted to welcome one of our new colleagues to meet and speak with you. And with that in mind, it's my real and deep pleasure to welcome to the stage now Victoria Thomas. Victoria is an assistant professor in media and public engagement in the school. She's an interdisciplinary scholar of Black popular cultural studies. She primarily analyzes popular media to articulate how visual culture represents Blackness and Black identities. Her research is committed to political and civic engagement, diversity, and inclusion in public institutions to transform societal conditions. Victoria is part of leading new work, new courses, new vision in our school. And it's my honor to welcome Victoria to the stage to address you.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. This is an interesting event to be at because it's the 50th anniversary of a school which I've only been since 2021. So I guess I am considered to be the person who will be speaking 25 years from now when it's our 75th anniversary. And I'll be telling all of the stories about the 27 years that I've been here, God willing. So today I just kind of want to give a couple remarks about how I kind of arrived in the School of Communication, as well as thinking about our particular theme that we're carrying of communication as critique. So for me, having been here for 2 years in the School of Communication at Simon Fraser, I've really got to be a part of a really, really great community. And in particular for me, I interviewed for this job online during the pandemic, and I came to Canada for the first time when I got this job. So for me, I was really thinking about where is a place that I can go where not only will my research be heard and be seen, but also a place where people are looking to kind of push the boundaries and to really think about, as we said, this idea of communication as critique. So in particular for me, when I think about how I teach and how I think through this, one of the very first things that I get my students to really think about is how to suspend their first judgment. I think that is the key to critique. Whatever that first judgment you have about any particular situation, throw it in the garbage and really think through what could be your next particular judgment, right? And so I think critique in particular is really about moving beyond what are my first assumptions, what are the first things I think of, and how can I push us to a new level. And so particular for me, there's a particular book that speaks a lot about my work and what I do. And the name of this book is All the Women Are White, All the Blacks Are Men, but Some of Us Are Brave. And so in particular, communication as critique is about being brave. And it's about really being okay with moving somewhere new, even if it's somewhere you've never been. And in particular, if I think about what Dr. Joy Johnson was talking about, this idea that we started somewhere and now we're here, right? And the ways in which the world moves, the ways in which communication moves, it's kind of up to us to always be brave in these particular communication moments, in these particular historical moments of what it means to critique and kind of push us to a new society. And in particular, when I think about this idea of critique, I think about this idea of critique as it comes from a lot of marginalized individuals. So if we look at the field of communication, a lot of us can name a lot of these great scholars, and a lot of them don't look like me, right? And so in particular for me, I have to be brave with the research I do. I have to be brave with the critiques I make. And so I have to also be aware that a lot of our fight for freedom, including teaching and writing about myself, ourselves, and our community, is really to further our own liberation. And so if we think about the School of Communication, we can really think about the ways in which we have created a lot of writings, a lot of research about liberation, and not just liberation for one group, but liberation for all groups. And so a lot of my research in particular looks at the ways in which Black trans people are able to critique a particular society that has never accepted them, and they're able to survive and to continuously to move forward. So a lot of my teaching asks my students to think about what does it mean to continuously move forward in the face of all of the things that we will continue to face, right? We survived the pandemic. We are currently in war times in Ukraine and Israel and Hamas. We're also still fighting a lot of truth and reconciliation here in Canada. And so to really think about how the School of Communication can be at the forefront of these conversations, at the forefront of this scholarship and change, is really something that I look forward to being a part of in the school. And I know I don't know a lot of alumni. I had one alumni here who did graduate just recently. So it's nice to see some of the newer alumni as well as the older alumni who are able to kind of see the changes or to able to think through where our school is going and where our school could go. And so in particular for me, I think it's important for us as we think through the history and where we're going, is to really acknowledge the role of courage, the role of bravery, and the role of privilege that we have to push those boundaries, right? And so if I look out at all these people, if I think about the alumni, even the faculty members, I am one of the first Black tenure-track faculty members in the School of Communication. And so right now I have to be very, very brave in the hopes that one day there will be a Black trans woman standing up here speaking about what it means to work in our academy. One day we will have more and more marginalized people who are changing not only the ways we see communication, but the ways we see each other. And so it is my hope for the next 50 years, 25 years, that we continue to maintain that role of bravery, in particular in our discipline, and to kind of push boundaries that allow us to have better conversations, more nuanced conversations that push us towards social change. And I've seen a lot of that since I've been here, and I'm just looking forward to the next couple of decades and to see what this room looks like 25 years from now. Hopefully we have more and more diverse faces, more and more diverse professors, and we're just able to show how being brave can contribute a lot to the type of world we want to live in. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victoria, for a powerful and brave speech that maps out the needs we have as a school for a rich and diverse future. I too look forward to 25 years from now, although I'm not going to be doing this. I do want to recognize some faculty members who are in the room with great gratitude. I want to mark, first of all, Dr. Peter Anderson over in the corner. Peter, you want to put up your hand? I saw, and I want to acknowledge Dr. Barry Truax, who's sitting right there. Right there. Beside Martin, we have Chris Jaselnik. Chris, great to see you. And on the other side of Martin, Peter Chow White, some of you will know, former director of the school. Fabulous to have. We have Richard Smith here. And I also want to acknowledge Dr. Milena Drumeva, the associate director of the school, who's wearing a ring. It's now our pleasure to turn to two of our alumni who we wanted to invite back to address you. And I'll talk about both, but let me begin by introducing Simi Sarah, who really needs no introduction, I think, in this room. Many of you listen to Simi on a regular basis and probably know her voice more than anybody else's voice in this room. If we all closed our eyes and listened to her, we'd think we're on our way to work, but we're actually ending the day, which is fabulous. Simi Sarah is a Canadian radio and television broadcaster, currently a talk radio host on The Simi Sarah Show on CKNW Radio. Prior to that, she spent 10 years in local television hosting City TV's Breakfast Television, again, as many of us will know. It is Simi's willingness to come out and support the school, the speed at which she responded to our invitation and agreed to come out gives us such satisfaction in knowing the care that people have as they conduct their lives and carry on their future. The school remains with them, and we're tremendously honored to welcome Simi Sarah to the stage.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm sorry that Dr. Joy Johnson isn't here because she's been so great to me, and she made it sound like the time that she was with me on the radio was some kind of love fest, and I will tell you it was not. I was actually interviewing her about the termination of the football program. Yeah, I know, right? And she was so generous with her words up here, and I was sitting there going, did we do the same interview that I'm remembering here? Because I remain a big supporter of athletics, and I was not happy with the SFU decision. And I certainly let her know that when she was on my show, only employing the skills that I was taught at the School of Communication, of course. And she was very generous with her words to me. So I appreciate that. And being in radio as well, this is my 30th year actually in the kind of media and broadcasting industry here in Vancouver. And in radio, which is the end, I've been in newspapers, I have been in television. Radio to me remains the single greatest medium of communication. The one medium that was around when this started 50 years ago and remains just as relevant today as it was 50 years ago. So I do love that. And I want to thank you so much for the honor of being able to speak here tonight, really about an institution and a school that has meant so much to me personally. So way back in 1989, if I could indulge you for a moment here, I was in grade 12 and I was deciding where I wanted to go for university. Now, my whole life had been the expectation that I would go to UBC. And the reason is I was a first generation Canadian from an immigrant family to this country. A very high premium was placed on education, as I'm sure so many of you can understand. It was the reason my grandparents chose to come to Canada when they had their choice of a number of different places that they could have gone. They had 7 daughters and they had 4 sons. And they wanted to make sure that their 7 daughters had just as many opportunities as the boys did in their family. And so we all understood that that meant education, and we had to work to make those opportunities happen. So by the time that I was ready to go to university in 1989, I would have been, theoretically, the 3rd generation to go to UBC. I had a great uncle who was among the first people of color to graduate from that particular institution. I had several aunts and uncles who had graduated, including my mother, who never ceased to remind me of that. So expectations were really, really high that I was going to go to UBC, except I chose otherwise. And one of the reasons is this. And when I was in grade 9, I was in love with all things Hollywood and movies and television and mediums. And I decided that I did want to be a film director. And so I wrote to several universities to ask about film as an area of study. Only one wrote me back, and that was Simon Fraser University. And I kept that letter. And the school in turn kept my loyalty when the time came 3 years later for me to choose somewhere to go. I never did end up, of course, studying film, but I did remain connected to the school. And so when I had to tell my mother that I had chosen to come to Simon Fraser University, she was devastated, to be honest. And she said to me, but that's the hippie university. Now, as some of you will know, we're talking about a time when she was at UBC, SFU was just starting in 1965. And yeah, that was, in a good way, the hippie university, because it meant that it was the alternative. It was the alternative to the establishment and the elite and all those places that felt out of reach for so many people there. It was the unique place. And for me, and for so many of us, I think, in this room, it ended up being the better place, the better choice for all of us, right? Now, I didn't, unfortunately, finish my degree after starting it. I lost my mother in a car accident at the end of my first year at Simon Fraser University, and it completely changed my trajectory. It sent me to journalism school. It sent me onwards. But many years later, with two teenagers who were considering where to go for university themselves, I thought, you know what, I should probably finish what I had started. And so at the age of 42, I approached Simon Fraser University about coming back. And this to me is why it is such a great school, and why the School of Communication will always have a very special place in my heart. They valued my life experience. They understood my path and the trajectory that I had been on. They helped me find that way back to post-secondary and back to my Bachelor of Arts degree, which I finished here at the School of Communication in 2017. So a lot of years after I started. Thank you. And you know, a lot of people ask me, like, why are you bothering? Like at that point, I had already done so many things. I had been on television, I was on radio, and I had accomplished a lot. So people would say, why are you bothering to finish this thing? And you know what? I had a career that has given me the freedom to pursue inquiry and ask questions of people at the highest levels, presidents of universities and all sorts of things. The best thing about my job is that it allows me a lot of opportunities to learn and to continue learning. I learn from experts all over the world. I learn from masters in their field, and I get to ask them all sorts of questions. But it is the tools that I learned at the School of Communication at Simon Fraser University that has allowed me to take all of that information that I have learned and was learning and put it into context. Not just for me, but for the thousands of listeners who do tune in every morning to listen, and thank you for that, Stuart. I appreciate it. And I am so grateful for that. So journalism taught me how to question things, but the School of Communication taught me years later how to put those answers in perspective and give them proper historical and current context. Because asking questions without all that context is just, listening to myself talk. It's just a lot of hot air. So the School of Communication taught me to dig deeper. It taught me to see the bigger picture out there. It taught me to search for the patterns and then explain them in a way that people could understand so they could see those same connections, and then I could help them do that. So I am now very proud to say that after I went to SFU and finished, I've had 3 or 4 cousins follow me, one who even completed her PhD here. I haven't quite broken that UBC hold though, because my daughter spurned me and went there and graduated from there, but that's okay. I'm working on it. I'm getting there. So thank you to the School of Communication at Simon Fraser University. Thank you for helping me and for so many others in the room here learn about the bigger world, and for having me here tonight. I really appreciate it, and congratulations.
Thank you so much, Simi. I love the pathways that you marked of your own history with the school. I think it captures the rich and complex roots that many have taken to us and from us. And I think that's important to remember that for many of our students are in fact first members of their family. This is not true in your case, but first members of their family who have gone to university. And they represent new possibilities and new visions. I love that you came back after, 15 years, something like that, to come back? Don't trace it. It was a long. And that we could do that with you. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Simi. It's now my pleasure to introduce our final guest. And I was so very grateful, excited when he agreed to come and share the stage with us. A number of years ago, I was teaching one of our undergraduate courses, a course that's been around for some time, Communication 221, Media and Youth Culture, a course that many people really love in our program. I've had the privilege of teaching it for years. And in the process of teaching the course, I live on the east side of Vancouver near Commercial Drive, and I'd be hanging out in a cafe planning the course. And in the process, there was somebody who I'd constantly see in the same cafe. I'd walk in and I'd see him there. And I knew him because I loved his music. And I'd been listening to his music for years. and couldn't believe that he was walking into my cafe, which was, 5 minutes down the street from my door. So you do these sorts of things. You get up the courage, right? And you bring yourself to sort of introduce yourself, as I did, to Shad, cornered him, explained in that kind of innocent way about how much I loved his music, play his music. But at that point, our son was in his teenage years. It was part of our family soundtrack as much as my own. And Shad's response was generous and warm and curious and welcoming. Nothing like I thought a hip hop artist might be. Shadrach Kabango is a Rwandan Canadian recording artist. He's released 7 full-length albums. He's earned a Juno Award for Recording of the Year in 2011. 5 of his albums have been shortlisted for the Polaris Music Prize. Many of you will remember he spent a year with us as hosted as the host for CBC radio's show Q. He has been a presence, a figure not only in our school, but in our country. It is one of those honors that he also carries with him the legacies of our school. He's an alumni of the School of Communication. He represents a vision, a career, an impact that marks the kind of hopes that we have for the work that we do. And so with Simi, who we're so grateful for opening this part of our program, it's now my pleasure to turn and to introduce Shadrach Kabango, who you better know, I'm not doing all I should, who you all better know as Shad. Welcome to the stage.
Thanks so much for that introduction. Now I'm the nervous one because I'm used to speaking with a beat behind me, and this is just dead silence. But I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to celebrate with you, to hear some of these lovely talks and that really moving video. I consider myself a friend of communication studies, SFU alumnus, and so I'm glad to reflect a little bit on this theme of critical thought and action as it's related to my life and work. So I feel like I should start with hip hop. That's where I've spent my career. And interestingly, hip hop is also celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. So yes. I'll start, there you go. So a bit of a history lesson first about the roots of hip hop as it relates to critical thinking. Hip hop was really born from this questioning mode that we're celebrating tonight. The catalyst, the genesis for what we know today as hip hop, as rap music, were young DJs like Kool Herc and Grandmaster Flash that approached the turntables, record players, with a questioning, critical eye. Grandmaster Flash in particular, his questioning and experimentation around this piece of equipment effectively transformed the turntable from something that was just used to play recorded music and turned it into an instrument, effectively, that could make a host of new sounds, that could repeat sections of a record seamlessly, and so on. So his questioning attitude birthed a genre that's now 50 years old, that spread all over the world, and all the way to London, Ontario, where I grew up and encountered my musical heroes in hip hop, people like Lauryn Hill, people like Common, Outkast, that in a similar way to Grandmaster Flash, looking at the machinery of the turntable with a critical eye, they looked at the machinery of society with a critical eye. And out of that, they yielded brilliant insights and hidden histories. And so when I started out in music, my goal, and my goal continues to be, to continue in that same tradition and adding my little piece to it of being a critical voice and a critical actor in the world through music. Now, what I discovered on that journey is that one of the biggest challenges for artists with respect to that kind of work is stamina. It is difficult to maintain the courage and the energy to continue to be a critical thinker and actor in the world, in any industry, and the music industry, as you probably well know, has its own unique challenges as far as pressure, obsession with image, and all sorts of things. And that's where SFU comes into the story for me. So between 2007 and 2011, I was a part-time student here in the Graduate Liberal Studies program. And it was such an amazing privilege to have that space to continue to learn, to continue to develop my thinking. But probably most importantly, it was just a vital reminder in the hecticness of the music industry that life is much bigger than my little industry and my tiny corner within it. And I'll just share one anecdote from that time that speaks to that important influence. So in 2011, I was wrapping up my studies here at SFU, and I was invited to write a blog post for the Vancouver Sun about anything that was kind of relevant to the news cycle at that time. And I decided to write about the Juno Awards, which are the kind of main music awards in my industry. And I decided to write a piece that actually questioned the value of music awards in general. I was nominated that year, so I felt I had sufficient stake. I wasn't just like taking a jab. And while I understood that the practical purpose of these awards, they've been beneficial even in my own career, it still felt important to me to question openly whether me and my colleagues were doing all that we could with this platform that we had created. And I bring that up because that piece, it was shared a little bit on a then new website called Twitter. And I got to discuss it on a radio show that, as fate would have it, I'd later host. But the real reason why I want to bring this up is because that piece was inspired, that critical lens was inspired by texts that I read while I was at SFU, when I had that space to continue to develop as a thinker and continue to be inspired and renew that energy and that courage that was so important to the kind of work that I wanted to carry out. So I just want to thank SFU for that time and space that artists are just rarely afforded. Here's where I want to complicate our theme a little bit tonight. And actually, I think I'm going to be echoing some things that Professor Laba said about educational imagination. Because as I was thinking about this theme and its importance in my own life and in my work, I was thinking absolutely critical thinking, so important, deep questioning, absolutely. But also trust has been so important. Openness and generosity have been so important. These aren't exactly conflicting ideas, but I do want to reflect a little bit on the marriage of deep questioning and deep trust. And I want to say firstly on that topic that that's what I experienced at SFU, talking about the classroom as an important place. In the GLS program, we mostly had 3-hour classes that were mainly just discussion. It was mainly conversation. There was a big emphasis on being together, being in community. As we did this deep thinking, as we challenged ourselves and challenged each other, we never lost sight literally of each other's humanity. Likewise, in performing, my experience involves holding the same tension. I always try to present myself truthfully, present what I uniquely have to offer on the stage, which in a lot of my songs includes a critical perspective. But I also learned way back from my heroes that that is best received when it's presented with energy, with vulnerability, with generosity. When what's under the critique isn't a desire to alienate, but of course a desire to be understood, a desire for deeper connection. I've noted the same importance in my experiences, literally questioning people as an interviewer on CBC's Q and also on Hip Hop Evolution on Netflix. In that work as well, I noticed both criticality and trust have to be held together. As a host, my job is to welcome my guests with respect and good faith. At the same time, my job is to pose challenging questions. But I noticed that if done correctly, a difficult question isn't an imposition, it's actually deeply respectful. It can be part of a genuine desire to understand another person. It demonstrates respect for another person's intellect and character when you're challenging them to be more clear, when you're challenging them to be more truthful. It can actually be deeply dignifying. Back to Grandmaster Flash for a second. I've talked about non-hip hop things for way too long. But also on that same point, he was investigating the machinery of the turntable because he wanted to make people dance. That was his goal. And so I just want to highlight, not exactly attention, because as I said, they're not conflicting ideas, but the importance of holding both. As I think about my own work, and especially as I think about the world now, I think both are super, super important. And I'm sure that's a big part of the work that's being done at this university. So thank you so much for having me here to celebrate with you. It's a wonderful opportunity to reflect on this super important theme. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shad. I can't tell you how the way you opened your talk reminded me of the gift you shared with our students, which was to lay in the power of music as both a deep and historical form with these creative explosions that open up whole new possibilities. I also wanna make mention of the way in which you cast us back to our classes. And how the time when we're in university is, I think for many of us, what I would call thick time. They're big years, they're long years, they're years that stay with us, that carry us forward, and that we hold on to because they're filled with meaning and people and relationships that we don't want to let go of, and that in fact define what good and hopeful worlds are in our futures. I really appreciate you reminding us of that and bringing us back to those experiences. As we bring ourselves and this portion of our program to a close, I want to say a few things. First of all, I recognize we're a little bit over time, and I'm sure many of you are very hungry. There's lots of food at the back now. This has all been set up as we've been chatting with each other. So please, I want to say as we pull ourselves to a close in this part of the program, please spend some time sharing food, breaking bread together. There are drinks as well, and we encourage you to share and stay with us for a little while longer if you're able. I want to make mention of our last keynote speaker series on November 16th, which will be with Sarah Benet-Weiser, fantastic scholar on branding and intersectionality. She's coming to us from, some of you may know, she's the new dean of the Annenberg School of Communication at the University of Pennsylvania. A remarkable scholar, and her willingness and dedication to stick with this commitment after becoming dean only reminds me of how much she really wants to come and share and celebrate with us. So please do come out if you're able. I'll also make note of an event on December 1st and 2nd. We have our final event in the 50th anniversary celebration, which is a day and a half research symposium. Much of that on December 2nd is spending time with current, past faculty members and current graduate students, as well as doctoral students who have gone on to careers in communication studies, as well as retired faculty members who are coming back to moderate our events on December 2nd. On December 1st, we have a fantastic keynote, though, and a reception. Keynote is by scholar Dylan Robinson from UBC, who's a fantastic, incredible Indigenous scholar of music and music studies. We encourage you, if you're interested, to go to our website and you can register for that December 1st keynote. That will draw our celebration to a close of the 50th anniversary. You'll be able to find online the digital timeline as well as our tribute video as of next Monday. We, at this point, I want to extend a couple of thank yous for some really key people who have made tonight's event possible. Above and beyond many in our own school, somebody who I called on to help us out to organize our celebration, who has been a remarkable anchor, guide through this, our work together, is my friend Joanna Ashworth, and I'm so grateful to her for her work. Did Shauna K. Brown return to the room? She's way at the back. And Shauna Kay wears the best white glasses, but I want to just make recognition of the work she's done to help organize our 50th anniversary celebration, in particular our digital timeline, as I mentioned earlier. Shauna Kay, we could not have done this without you, and we have much gratitude, so thank you so much. On that note, we have weekends ahead of us. We have a night ahead of us. Please come and spend a little more time together. Have food, have a drink before you leave. Thank you to Shad. Thank you to Simi. Thank you to Victoria and to Martin for speaking with us in her absence, to President Johnson. It's great. It's my gratitude to be with you all. Have a wonderful night. Thank you so much.